Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Behind the Brand, where we feature and we profile the top sales associates at Illustrated Properties. And today we actually have the top producer at Illustrated Properties for the last 4 years running. He's also one of the top sales associates in the luxury space in all of the United States. Vince Marotta. He is well known to us, and he is well known to many people across the luxury portion of our business across the country. And if you fly into the Palm Beach airport, you see him because his billboard is right there when you enter the jetway. Vince, welcome.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. This is great. So you've got quite a history, and you sold 130 million last year, and you're on pace to do that again. And we love learning from you, and we love how you teach all of our other producers. But kind of talk about your journey in terms of getting into the real estate business. How did you end up in the real estate business here in South Florida? And talk about your story a little bit.
Well, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and when you spend some winters growing up there, you realize pretty quickly that when you're an adult, you want to move down to the Sun Belt. So I went to Yale University, and when I graduated, I was immediately interested in real estate. There was just something about taking an idea, putting it on paper, building it, selling it, decorating it, all those things that I thought was really cool. And I always was attracted to residential. So toiled in a couple of different veins in that fashion, and then I moved down to South Florida and really was on the development side, more of a speculator, and did quite well, but unfortunately got a little too big for my britches, and I think I expanded a little too quickly. I thought I was diversified, but I was really doing the same thing in just a number of different areas in South Florida. So long story short, in the Great Recession, I got really hurt. And I had to reinvent myself. I was only in my 40s at the time, so I thought still had an opportunity to do things, but didn't have time to become a doctor or a lawyer, so I became a realtor. And took a couple of years to really get my footing. It's, as you know, tough at the start, but I just kept grinding, and things kind of took off from there.
You know, it's interesting. I think back to we're past the Great Recession just enough where there are many people in our business, especially with the population growth here in South Florida, where there are a lot of sales associates that they don't see things through the lens of having gone through what we went through in 2008, 9, and 10. And it's almost like if you didn't go through that and experience it, you see things from a much different perspective than the others.
Well, the one thing that I always hung my hat on was I thought if I worked harder than the next guy, eventually it was going to gain traction. And I like to tell people, I think that every client you have is a multiple of 10. Because when you consider their friends, their business associates, their family, I just signed 2 deals this week that were friends of a client of mine. One was $5 million, one was $2 million. Yeah. And these are people I would have never known, but because of the way I handled the original client, he told their friends. So I tell people all the time, you may drive home certain nights thinking you didn't have a great day, but if you worked your butt off, you probably affected somebody in a positive fashion.
Yeah, you have a lot of people, I've heard them ask you this, you have a lot of people that are selling $1 million homes, maybe $2 million homes, maybe they haven't reached that $1 million mark yet. And they come to you, of course, and they say, Vince, how do I sell $5 million $5 million home? How do I sell a $20 million home? You sold, you sold about 131 million last year, and probably on pace to exceed that this year. What do you tell them when they come to you for advice?
It's so funny because they're looking for the secret sauce, and there really isn't any. I mean, it's just effort. The thing I say to myself daily is, what is something that I can do that other realtors aren't going to be willing to do? What is that differentiator that's going to make my client go home and say to their friends, oh man, you got to use this guy, he does everything. And I'll give you a couple examples. I have, remember last week we had all those terrible storms?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of these houses I just put under contract, we went over to the house. It was like a waterfall in the den. I mean, we didn't have a leak, we had a flood.
Yeah.
Well, I happen to have roofers on call because when they show up, bam, I pay them there on the job. I pay them. Yeah. Now, if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be able to get the guy that day, right? Yeah. So I thought, I'm going to do something that other guys can't do. And when my client saw that, he's like, you got a roofer this afternoon in this storm? How'd you do that? Same thing with a handyman. You know, every time I have a deal, you know how you have that gap between what sellers are willing to do to fix the house. They say, oh, it's as is.
Yeah.
And then the buyer goes, well, but you know, there's all these problems we didn't know about. If it's something less than $4,000 or $5,000, I have my guy go in and do it. And I just handle it. And I say to the buyer, that's your housewarming gift. I say to my seller, I took care of it for you. Sometimes the other realtor splits it with me. If he's not even willing to do it, that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's a differentiator. Those are two examples of things outside the box that you do that will put you on another level.
Well, you obviously market yourself. We talked about the airport ads, which you're kind of famous for. It's like, who's the guy in the airport? Who's it? You know, and of course you do other advertising, but you're not out there. You know, you're not out there pitching and trying to sell yourself. You know, your business is sphere of influence and people that say, hey, you got to call Vince. He's my guy. He's done a great job with me before. It's kind of hard to sometimes quantify or to be able to articulate that value that you just mentioned. You almost have to experience it.
Well,
right?
But what I'm saying to you is it can't just be advertising. That in and of itself is just false bravado. You have to really be better. You have to work harder. You have to know your farming area. I mean, this may sound hubris, but I don't care. I mean, I know that I know the Bears Club better than anybody. Yeah. I've been there since 1999. I know every blade of grass in the community. I know all the people. I know every deal that went down. You can't tell people you're an expert if you're not really willing to do that. You got to go to every open house. You got to be involved in every transaction. You got to make sure you see all the properties. You've got to understand what the pros and cons are. I mean, I like the fact that when I talk to a buyer, I can first just say to them, tell me about your lifestyle. Once I know your lifestyle and your general budget, I can kind of tell you where I think the best fit is for you. But you can't say that unless you know those areas.
Yeah. It's it's almost like you bring, and we've watched you for a while now. You list the most expensive properties in our area, and you're very comfortable in that space, and you understand that lifestyle. But you almost bring a blue collar grit, internal grit to the whole process, and a work ethic that's really something that other people aspire to and look up to.
Well, I learned that from my parents. I don't know if people know this, but my father was an incredible businessman. He invented Mr. Coffee, the coffee machine, and he built tremendous success. But my parents were very grounded, very simple people, and they taught the six of us kids that you got to do your own thing. You got to make your own way in this world, and just giving kids money isn't necessarily going to give them a feeling of self-worth, of success. And at the time, I didn't quite understand that. I thought my parents were being a little bit tough on us, but in the end, it was a better way to go. I don't think I would have worked as hard as a realtor if they had babied me that way. So you just got to find your own way. And the other thing too is you got to have a lot of fun with it. Yeah. I mean, none of this is brain surgery. Especially when you're selling it at the kind of price points that we're discussing now. Nobody really needs that. It's not their first place. So go out there and have fun with the people. Really show them how cool it is, the lifestyle down here, and having fun. And I think they subscribe to that.
We've got a lot of eyeballs that are looking at the lifestyle down here, and it's pretty exciting with all the stuff that's happening. Well, tell the squeegee story and the bucket story, because that's one of my favorites. Okay. There's a lot of stories, but it's an indication of kind of how you operate your business.
Well, it kind of gets back to when I was starting as a realtor, and I couldn't have any ego about this, because on the development side, I was selling the most expensive stuff in the Bears Club in Old Palm. But when I became a realtor, I had to start at the very beginning. And I said to myself, I have two choices. I could either crawl in a corner of the room and just start crying, or I could do something about it. Right? I mean, that's all you can do. So I would get like a condo on the beach that was like the worst condo building on Singer Island. I mean, this is a terrible building. But it was on the beach, and I was happy to have a listing. So this one day I walked in, and I had a bucket of soapy water and a squeegee. And there was a lady who lived in the building who was sitting in the lobby. And she goes, hey, aren't you a realtor? And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to show one of these units that's on the ocean in about half an hour, and there's a lot of salt spray on the windows. Now, honest to gosh, I was not showing off. I just said to myself, damn it, I'm going to do this job better than anybody else will do it. I went up there, squeegeed the windows, showed the place. Got home that night. There were 5 messages on my machine from people in the building who wanted to give me my listing.
That's great.
So it just showed me, If you do more than the next guy, people will notice, and you have to do that at 300,000, $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $8 million, $10 million, whatever. You know, my phone rings at all hours of the day and night, and you better answer it, because believe me, there's other people that will take that job.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, one of the things, our whole, you know, our area is changing. We have you know, population growth. We have the industry's changing. The needs of our customers are changing. You know, is the definition of luxury changing since you transitioned out of the development world into the sales side of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always changing a little bit. You go through certain facets of it. You know, at one point it was more kind of a heavy med look, and it's gotten more modern and traditional and stuff.
Yeah.
But what hasn't changed is the need to be very clear and truthful to your client. Yeah. And the biggest thing that I think people need to think about in the environment we're in right now is you got to be brutally honest with your sellers. I mean, you just got to tell them. There's only two reasons why a place doesn't sell. It's either not being advertised enough, or it's overpriced. Yeah. And in most instances, it's the latter. So,
well, how do you take yourself? I mean, because I think the difficult part for our luxury associates at times is that it's hard for them to distinguish, you know, the market and reality and what's really happening out there. In some cases, what their home is worth versus themselves. And so, how do you create that independence from what's happening in the market so that you can deliver the information that's needed to get to
again? I just think it's based on honesty. I mean, I tell people, look, if you're not getting offers, you're probably overpriced. If you're not getting showings, you're grossly overpriced. Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of inventory right now. So if you're not getting traction, you're overpriced. And I tell the sellers this all the time, sir, you know, I know you have an opinion and I have an opinion, but we're not buying this house. The market is telling you that it is overpriced. If you don't want to sell, that's fine. But if you do, we got to make a move. And I think that over time, you become more comfortable in that space. You know, when you're starting out, you just want to do whatever your seller says, and you know, but that's not going to serve you. You're just going to waste time and money. Everybody's going to get angry. You're going to get a reputation as a guy who takes these crazily overpriced listings. It doesn't benefit anybody. Yeah, it really doesn't.
Yeah, yeah. So I got kind of a fun question for you. We'll see what you come up with. But
okay.
If you could have dinner with anybody in the world, whether they're still with us or they're deceased and they're from history, who would you sit down with?
That's really easy for me.
Really?
Oh yeah, it would be my two parents.
Oh.
Yeah. And I couldn't care where I'd be, man. It could be on a hillside with a ham sandwich, but I would give every penny I have for that.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
They were great people.
That's awesome.
And you know, when I do a really big deal and you get back in your car and you got that contract signed, like the first thing I think about is, oh man, if I could just tell my old man I just sold something $20 million, you know. Yeah. Yeah. He'd be going crazy.
He'd be going nuts over it.
Yeah. So my second best option is to call Mike Pappas. So I just call him. And he's like, oh, man, this guy's so sappy. Nah, but, you know, the point is you got to really appreciate it. I mean, to be in this market where we are at this level, I mean, what a gift from God that is, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I could be selling stuff in the middle of nowhere for nothing, and here I am selling the most beautiful stuff on the East Coast. I'm really grateful.
Makes some of the headaches go away every now and then, doesn't
Absolutely. It? Yeah. We're really fortunate to be here.
Yeah.
Fortunate to be with the team we have.
We're fortunate that you're at Illustrated Properties. Thanks, and we can't thank you enough for we love the sales, and you're the best in the business. There's no doubt about that. But I think what we appreciate even more is the energy, the class, the professionalism, the tutorial nature by which you're always teaching our younger associates, and you're always willing to do whatever it takes to make us a better company and to demonstrate that Illustrated spirit.
Thanks, really man. I don't know how good I am or I'm not, but I definitely strive every day to be as good as I can be, and that's really the key. You know, you got to wake up every morning and say to yourself, okay, today what can I do that'll be different to take it to another level? And as long as you're pursuing that, you know, that's fun. And wherever the chips fall, if you get 70-80% of that, that's probably good enough.
Probably pretty good. Yeah. Thanks for coming today. Really
My
appreciate
pleasure,
you.
man. Thank you.
Okay.